Wellington for the dream start.
All right, welcome to another episode. My name is Dean Vasic. You can find me on X at #Kangas, Instagram #Kangaroos Podcast. Tonight, I'm joined by the Podfathers themselves, Bailey Tyson, Jason Hunt, Josh Neal. Boys, welcome to our annual pre-season preview show. I appreciate you all coming on. Jason, I want to start with you, actually. How is life going with the new addition in the last few months?
Yeah, it's going well. Rafa's settled into the family. He's got more North Melbourne gear than I do already, so off to a strong start. And we're about 3 months in, so it's been a big off season for me. I've certainly put on some kilos and some knowledge, but luckily I don't have to run out and play for North Melbourne.
Yeah, that's a bonus. Now we are here to preview the pre-season. I'll get your thoughts on this. Josh, welcome. And what have you made of the pre-season? I'm going to start with you.
Well, wait, me first. Look, I don't know. It's a little bit mixed for me personally. I think there's a lot of positives to take from the Eagles game. I think there's a lot of negatives to take from the D's game. Overall, I'm sort of right in the middle, to be honest. I think the Eagles game, obviously, if we're going to talk about that, I liked the game style and I liked our ability to maybe control the game a little bit more, slow the Eagles up when they did get a run and definitely hold the ball defensively a bit better from our forward 50 and not just leaking goals. But that being said, you know, we did give the Eagles a lot of easy shots directly in front of goals. So, look, we didn't get the win. Does that matter as much as the gameplay? Probably not, but I'm not wrapped. I'm not expecting a massive win in round one or anything like that. But, you know, it could have gone worse, but it could have gone better. There's my very, very neutral answer.
Yeah, right down the middle there. Just playing a straight bat there, Josh.
Yep.
Oh, 100%. Any concerns with you, Bailey, with the no wins? And welcome as well, by the way.
Thanks for having me again, Dean, and welcome, boys. You know, it's the age-old question, isn't it? How much weight do you put on preseason games? I think Josh summed up pretty well what we did well against West Coast. I think the big concern from myself and a lot of North fans in the Melbourne game was just the difference in strength of the squads and how badly we got outplayed in the second half. But I suppose you think at one point it's only a match sim, but we're so starved of success and with all the excitement coming out of pre-season, that was our first chance to properly see the boys, even though it was just a match simulation, and it was a bit disappointing, some of the stuff. But the biggest thing for me is we got through injury-free and no star players that are going to be missing round one besides George, but that was obviously already before our two hit-outs. So, yeah, really looking forward to the season to start.
Jason, any different thoughts to those two boys on the pre-season with you? Now, a bit of a mixed bag. I suppose the first game was a bit disappointing. An improvement in the second game, but still no wins as well.
Yeah, I think for me it was an interesting pre-season because we clearly went in trying to compete because we more or less played our best 23 for both of those, you know, actual games. When we played ourselves, like you've got plenty of mixing it up, but we more or less played our best 22 also. And so I think based on that, you'd kind of want a little bit to come up with a little bit more in terms of the results. The fact that we weren't able to win either of those games is a bit disappointing. Because if we weren't going to win, I'd prefer us to get some game time into some of those really young developing players, you know, like a Will Dawson or a Whitlock. Like we didn't see either of them in the preseason games against real opposition. And that's normally what you see. You sort of, particularly that first preseason game, normally you really go, all right, who we having a look at from the young crop. So that's probably the most disappointing part for me is that from what I can see, we really tried to compete and we just didn't really against Melbourne at all. And then, I mean, the West Coast game, a fair bit to unpack from that game. The wind was pretty horrific, but again, like I think you'd want to come away with a win. I think we wanted to win a game and we weren't able to do that. So that's disappointing. But in terms of what it means for how our season goes, I don't think it bears too much of an impact on that. Really, we'll have to wait and see what the next month or so holds in terms of our prospects, I think.
Well, fair enough. Josh, now hopefully you don't sit on the fence here, but maybe what are some of the things that are concerning you during the pre-season?
I mean, the big one's kicking inside 50. I think all North fans can agree with that. I just can't believe we consistently bomb away. Two of our best midfielders, LDU and Tom Powell, don't like to seem to hit players on the chest very much. Tom Powell can do it every now and then, but I'm almost questioning, is it a directive to just get the ball in quickly and bring it to ground? Because even when we do win a clearance and LDU or Powell can, burst away from a stoppage, we still don't even seem to take the second to look. We just go straight to the bomb into the 50, even if there is a little bit more time, and I think more time could be taken. So I guess that's probably my biggest concern, because I wouldn't say Darling or Likely are great pack marks, and if we want to get the most out of them, I think you've got to rely on their leading patterns and get them that set shot. The only other thing, I guess, if we're going to, without putting a whole list of concerns, the only other major one for me is just the transition defense. I think it's another one we can all sort of agree on. It was better against West Coast, and that's probably the first time I've seen us be able to, bearing that in mind, it was only about a quarter we did that for very well, but we were trying to hold the ball in our 50, and we did have some success not letting that ball just be 4 kicks from our 50 to the opposition 50 in a goal. So I'd say kicking inside 50 and defending the transition are our two biggest weaknesses, and the two biggest things I'm definitely the most worried about for the season.
Sounds like you've been listening to my podcast, Josh, because I think that's all we've talked about is those two main concerns.
Yeah,
but Bailey, besides the results, you were sort of bit disappointed in the Melbourne game. Any other concerns different to Josh and Jason, maybe?
Yeah, I thought the Melbourne game, we got killed on the spread. But then again, you're watching, not having the opportunity to be at the ground. It's, you only can see what's in front of you on the TV. I suppose something that in both practice hit-outs was some of the use coming from our defensive 50. Like, if it's not Caleb Daniel, there's not a whole lot of targets hit. Like, I suppose Luke McDonald and Darcy Tucker are two that had some not great games and a lot of long bomb kicking. I mean, Chom had a couple of horrors, switching with that little 20-meter chiseler. So, yeah, I suppose that's my concern heading into the season, that if teams put a lockdown forward onto a Caleb Daniel, then who do we have that's going to be able to use that run and good use off the half-back line? That's why I think potentially we see Colby McKercher down there a little bit more than we thought probably a month ago.
I'll talk about him a bit later, because his roles has been interesting the first two games. It's very different from last year. Jason, what have been some of the things that you have liked? I mean, we'll talk about the positives because it can't all be negative.
Yeah, I think seeing Jack Darling in the way that he's integrated into the forward line has been positive. I was probably sort of middling on my expectations for him. I wasn't someone that was completely down on him, but I also wasn't someone that was, expecting him to completely change the way that we play forward half. And I think we've seen that, he can mark the ball and he can create that kind of option, particularly when he's playing second ruck. I thought he's been really good at sort of filling the hole and, doing what a ruckman should do in that position. So I think, his integration's positive. I mean, Caleb Daniel, Ballard spoke about, like, he's obviously been fantastic off halfback. It'd be nice to have two of him, because I think he's actually pretty serviceable as a defender as well. He's not just a distributor. He can defend, compared to his height and his weight. I think he's a pretty good defender. So that's been positive, and I think that it's the classic. We can sort of start to see what the bones of this build's going to be like. I guess we can see that we've got all of these young midfielders that are coming along at different rates or in slightly different roles, and I think we can, and Sheasel doesn't need to be spoken about too much, but I think we saw some really good signs from Finn O'Sullivan in the minutes that he played. Even the intra-club with Zane Dersma, I know it's hard to take a lot out of an intra-club, but he looked fantastic in that intra-club playing for the opposition, so to speak. So I think for me, that's the potential positives. But as we know, you get to round one or round two, and sometimes whatever's happened in the preseason is easily forgotten. We think back to last year, and we were pretty happy with that Collingwood game, and then we were sort of competitive against St Kilda, and then we didn't win until after the bye. So it's hard to keep with those positives in mind. But I think there is a lot to like so far.
Josh, continuing on with that. Now, very good points by Jason there. There were some key individual players that probably stood up and shone in the pre-season. Anything else for you?
I agree with all that, especially Jack Darling is my go-to, but obviously we've spoken about that. I've been so impressed with him. I think for me, it's just maybe the way the forward line functions looks a little bit better and looks a lot more balanced with Darling there. From all the three lines of our team, the defense is maybe more my concern, where I did feel like our forward line maybe functioned worse than our defense did last year. We did at least have a patch after the bye where our defense showed that it could do something. So yeah, I like what we're trying to implement, and I can sort of see what we're trying to do. Another thing I guess I could say that I really liked was I feel like our players driving us are our younger players now. You can really see that core of Shees, McKercher, Fino Sullivan has been really, really good. There's one to talk about.
Yeah, we definitely will.
Yeah, so that young core of guys, and we know what Wardler will add when he comes into that, all that young core of draft picks that we have drafted over the last 3 years looks to be ready to start pushing this team forward instead of still looking for maybe more guidance or waiting for some of the more experienced heads to prevail. So I feel more confident in our young core pushing the team forward and getting us the wins this year than having to rely on some of the older guys having a good game. I guess that's probably the biggest one I can think of outside of what was spoken about before.
Bailey, I've left last to you. The boys have covered a lot there. Anything different there?
No, not really. I agree with a lot of what they've said, particularly on Foss and Darling. Caleb Daniels, another one that, coming across after a couple of inconsistent years at the Doggies, not through his own fault, but through selection. And at his age, you sort of think, are we going to say the absolute best of him? And so far, I think we have. Like, he's had probably one bad kick out of 60 across the two hit outs, and he's just so consistent. And just touching on, I think it was Jason, apologies, it was you, Josh, talking about his defensive efforts. He had a couple in the West Coast game where it was sort of the ball would bounce and it was anyone's ball, and he ran when he had to, and even though he's not the biggest frame, just putting his body on the line. That's the sort of stuff we want to see. Another one I'll touch on that's a bit of left of field. I think having Griffin Logue back is going to be a big plus for our back line. With Core not having to take the big boys and allowing Chom to be an interceptor as well. So seeing some of the best, I think the second half against the Eagles, he played quite well, and he was one of the senior heads, I thought, in that second quarter when they kicked 4 or 5 in a row that really took the sting out of the game and just retained possession. So I think he'll be almost like a new recruit, as he only played the 1 or 2 games last year.
I think.
Yeah, so that's probably the biggest positive for me.
No, that's actually a good shout. Yeah, no, he'll be very important to our structure. And 2 games he played last year, I think we were quite competitive in. So, yeah, it'd be good to have him playing regular football. I wouldn't mind talking about the 2 different games here, Jason. Now, we've seen a bit more of a run and gun approach against the Demons, which sort of failed a little bit. And then against the Eagles, we played a game style that was high possession. I think we had I think it was 110 more possessions than the Eagles in that game. There was a lot more controlling the tempo of the game. How did you see that style as opposed to round 1?
Yeah, it's a tough one because I think the way that we played in the Eagles game was kind of dictated by the weather and the fact that there was that wind that really, swung the way that you want to play each quarter. I would much prefer to see us going for that gung-ho sort of precision kicking, but fast ball movement style. I know it didn't work against Melbourne, but like if we're going to be a good side, I think that's what we have to get good at. I don't think that we necessarily we don't have a high volume of really good kicks. So I think the way to get through the opposition defence then is to go fast and use players like McKercher, hopefully like Sullivan, certainly like Shees, these players that can kind of create a bit of havoc and then get it past where the opposition's set up. I think that's what I'd like to see us trying to do. I don't think it's going to be, there's going to be some failures. It's not going to work all the time. And we've seen that last year. How many times did Zach Fisher get himself into trouble because he tried to take the game on and had no options? But I think as we mature and as our game style matures, I think that's going to be the way that we win, or that we play winning football in the future. So I'd like to see us do more of that. But, when the weather dictates that you need to play a bit more possession, particularly if you're kicking into a big breeze, I think you've got to adapt. So I had no problem with seeing a bit of a change in that second game.
Josh, what are your thoughts? Are we good enough to play a run and gun approach right now? Now, Jason mentioned a few players, but you probably mentioned a lot of players that don't have that skill or running capabilities to break a line. How do you see the two opposing styles?
I definitely prefer the Eagles' approach. I don't think we're quite good enough to play run and gun football at this point. I think we will. We've got the players. When you talk about Godas or Hardemans, and if Fisher can become a player that we use more. We need more ball users. If we're still talking about we need a Colby or we need Finn O'Sullivan to be able to kick the ball off the back line correctly, then that says to me that no, we can't play run and gun football just yet. I think we've got the potential to, because like I said, if Goda and Hardeman and that sort of stuff are going to come into this team and be regulars, then we can move those guys like Colby and players like that up the field to keep running the ball. But I'd rather like to see us actively focused. And then when we can burst forward with the talent, one on the chest and using that. I think that Eagles approach is definitely the way we need to go. Ball last year and we're all excited for it. And, you know, we're all going to print shirts with North Ball on it, but we went 0-11. So let's not kid ourselves. And I don't think just getting Caleb Daniel and Luke Parker is going to be the difference between North Ball here and not. Caleb Daniel is, I've said this on the pod for me a couple of times, and I believe it. I think Caleb Daniel might end up being our most important player, maybe not necessarily our best, but our most important player to us transitioning the ball, definitely. But, yeah, I don't think we're ready to play that run and gun style until we know we can play Colby on the wing or half forward and get Foss up the ground with Shees and all those guys. No, not for me. I'd stick with the Eagles type and try and defend, bit of build-up play and deliver that ball a little bit better until we get and recruit or draft some better ball users.
Two different opinions there, Bailey. So where do you sit with it all? Now, Xavier Clark had an interesting interview straight after the game. He sort of said, we've got to get the balance right of when to attack and when to probably defend. Do you agree with that? Or do you agree more with Jason even that, we should try this run and gun approach because that will lead to more scores and more wins, or a bit more of a conservative approach where we could try and control the tempo of the game a lot more like Josh likes?
Well, I think it's almost a combination of the two. I think Clarko wants the side to be able to manoeuvre through the gears, like we saw in the West Coast game. We took the sting out of it when sides got on a run. But I think if you look at the best sides, and I'll reference the Giants because I watched them a couple of hours ago. But as soon as they get the ball to midfield, if they can hit those sort of 25 into the corridor, it's straight overlap run from the defence. So that's where you'd want to get your Colbys, your Finn O'Sullivans, all those in Harry Shees or LDU, Tommy Powell, those sort of players coming through for the handball receive and getting it fast inside to our forwards for one-on-one. But I don't think we've got enough players that can run and carry out of defence. So I think for that to work, you'd have to hit a lot of your 25 metre 45 angle kicks inboard. So I suppose the big question is, do we have the skill level to do that? And that sort of goes back to what I was mentioning before, that if teams put a lockdown forward on Caleb Daniel, I'm not sure we do. And I think then the boys would probably revert back to the long down the line game style. We know how that worked out at certain parts last year. So I think we've got to be more adventurous with the ball, trying to get into the corridor, particularly when our good users like McKercher, Daniel, and the others mentioned have the ball. So I think it's a bit of a combination of both, mainly depending on the game situation.
One thing I might say quickly, sorry, Dean, as well.
No, go for it.
Watching the Hawks and the Sydney game on whatever night it was now, Friday night. The one thing I haven't seen us do for 5+ years is we always run out of options when it gets into a stoppage situation or the ball comes to ground and we get it from a stoppage or we clear the ball. Once we take possession, we always run out of options. But then you watch, especially the Hawks, every single time they get the ball, they always have a little kick to the left. They've always got another handball in the chain. And that's a reason why I just don't see that from us ever, to be honest. Even it was better against the Eagles, but I think that was more of the Eagles are a poor side, because when we went up against the D's B team, we just kept running out of options. But the D's always had an overlap, always had another handball or a kick to find a guy running into space. And we just never have that for whatever reason. It's not individual players per se for me. It's more structure and scheme of the team. And I don't know why that hasn't been implemented with us yet, but I struggle to see how we can can play the run and gun game without turning it over if we just consistently run out of options with the handball game and don't have that little chip kick to the wing or side kick that we can do to relieve the pressure. I don't know if you guys agree with that or not, but I just haven't seen that from us for years. And watching the game on the weekend, or the Bulldogs through their good era, 7-8 years ago, did this so well. They're just handball, and there's always someone there running past. Yet we seem to run out of links in the chain.
I think it's just to butt in quickly. I think a lot of it's no confidence in the playing group. So long getting smashed and stuff. And when we do get it open, just dump kicking it and sort of that implied pressure a lot. Like we had a few circumstances in the 2 practice games where we had the actual outnumber in our forward 50 with run over chain. And it was just that implied pressure that, oh crap, this doesn't happen to us. So we better just, dump kick it or give a quick handball to someone under pressure. So I think a lot of it comes with composure as well. But it's certainly a good point you mentioned about the top sides and their ability to always have that extra link in the chain.
How do you get composure though? Like, how do we find how to do that? Because I agree with you 100%. Like confidence brings composure, but I don't know how we find that. Wins will find that, but then how do we get the wins make the composure, but the composure makes the wins? And we'll get it one day, and I fully believe will be a problem in 3 to 5 years. Don't get me wrong. I believe in the young talent, this team so much, but for 2025, how do you think we get the composure to get the wins? Because the wins will get the composure. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it'll be the development of our mids. Like LDU, instead of dump kicking it, he'll take the tackler on, and that'll bring someone up in the zone. Then that goes to Phillips to Powell, and then all of a sudden you've got a much better inside 50. So I think the group has to back themselves, and the class of the midfield that we have will come out and make it a little bit easier. But then again, we've just got to finish at the end of the day when we have these opportunities to deliver inside 50, because it's been a problem for a very long time.
I think, sort of adding on to that, it's like I totally get where you're coming from, Josh. Like, there's got to be a circuit breaker almost, but I think Clarko has to give them, I guess, the agency and the permission to make mistakes, because the only way that they're going to run to the right spots is that they have to believe that they're allowed to do that, and they've got the freedom to do that. I think that's why these better sides have those options, is because the players back their teammates in and say, if I run here, sure, I'm leaving my defender, goal side of me, but I believe that my team's going to win the ball. And we just don't have that belief. I don't think we play really, I guess, sheepishly, because we've been burned so many times before. Like, it makes sense to play that way. But what ends up is that we don't have those free players forward or sideways. We've got players that are playing sort of anticipating a turnover, and then we dump kick it, and then it's a quick turnover. It doesn't matter anyway. It goes over our heads. Like, how many times have we seen that happen? So unfortunately, I think we're just got to keep playing with a level of freedom and trust with each other, and hope that the players start to develop in such a way that it comes off more often, because I think that's the only way it's going to change.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, I don't know if you guys noticed in the game, but LDU was pushing a lot down into the back line to get the mark from the kick in a lot against the West Coast game. And I wonder if that's something that we're trying to do to get him to sort of build up from the back and have a little bit of explosion. And I guess this whole point can come back to what I was saying before, where I feel like our young core is ready to push us forward, instead of maybe the old guys bringing the young guys along with them, and maybe the young core getting more confidence and finally breaking out and being the leaders, or being the ones that are driving us forward. That comes with more confidence, which comes with higher skills and things like that. It's guys like Bailey Scott, though, that I watch all the time, just get the ball, run with it. Such a good run, link up handball guy. And then he'll just run into traffic, snap the ball around the corner and just turn it over all the time. Yeah. And the amount of times he kicks the ball around the body and it ends up in the opposition's hands or to a pack, it baffles me. But if guys like that can tighten that up, and then, like we said before, the Shees, the McKerchers, the O'Sullivans, the classier ball users, Daniels, that are coming through, and we have now, if they can start taking over this team and taking the reins, I fully agree. We've got the potential to do it. But maybe they bring the confidence to fire out the handball and always be in the right spot.
Sometimes a real lack of belief in synergy as well between midfield and forwards. I think you mentioned Bailey Scott there. He sometimes overdoes it with the running and takes 3 bounces, whereas a forward is let up, double back, let up, double back, and then he kicks it to no one in the end. So, yeah, it's about getting the synergy a little bit better and just making better decisions at the end of the day. So hopefully it can only get better, because if we can sort of get that right, we're not going to win games. We're going to win games comfortably, but we haven't won a game. Go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think the trio of additions of the senior leaders will help build that confidence in the group as well.
Yeah,
they've all come from successful clubs, and they've all been, really good players in the competition, with all Australians. So I don't think Darling has, but the other two. So
no, yes, Darling has. Yeah,
he has he?
Yeah,
so
he's been in Australia. Yeah.
That'll definitely help the group.
Yeah, definitely. Now, Jason, I want to talk to you about the back line. How do you like the balance there? Now, we talked a little bit about getting good ball users. We've got Caleb Daniel now. Do we need someone else there? Because, we've got three key defenders who are, who'll do a good job for you with intercepts. Jackson Archer as well, probably a bit 50-50 on his ball use. Luke McDonald, thereabouts. Darcy Tucker. We'll talk about Finn O'Sullivan in a second. But how do you like the balance there at the moment?
Yeah, you were reaching for a player to add to that Caleb Daniel, weren't you? Like, there's not a lot of distribution off halfback. It's like we've got someone like you can put Zach Fisher in, and look, last year he looked silly at times, but I think he is a decent distributor, but he's awful defensively. So you've kind of got to pick your poison. Like, do we want some solid defensive players, or do we want some players that can help us distribute? I think I'm putting a lot on this Josh Goda because he's done an Achilles. He hasn't played a lot of footy, but I think in theory, if he can get fit, I do think he unlocks a bit for us because he's a really good size and he's solid defensively and he's a great kick. I think if you put him alongside Caleb Daniel, I'm a bit happier with the balance back there. Like Luke McDonald's, he's not a good kick. He hasn't been a good kick for quite a while. He's got a penetrating kick at times, but he can't hit a target. Darcy Tucker is similar, and then you've got the three tools that, I don't ever want to see Chom try and kick a 20-meter ball this year. I think he just needs to focus on kicking it long. Jackson Archer, I think he's developing, but he's also not a good kick. So it kind of, you end up in this situation where it's really Caleb Daniel trying to get to someone that's on the wing, or trying to hit someone and they get the hand pass back, and we saw that so many times last year. And that there's all of that, so there's getting it out of there. And then I also think we're just a bit small because none of those low core Chom are sort of 200 centimeter beasts. We need one of them, so that's where I'm kind of sort of really waiting for Will Dawson or Matt Whitlock, and I could be waiting for several years if we're being realistic. But we need one of those two, I think, to really come on, just so we've got a really big option as a tall defender, and then you can put up with one of the others being outsized. So yeah, there's a fair few concerns for me in the defense, like there were last year. I think we're a step forward from last year, but the balance does seem a little bit off to me at the moment. I don't think there's an easy fix.
Josh, what are your thoughts on it all?
Fix it for me, Josh.
Yeah.
No worries, mate. Coming right up.
Yeah, that sounds good. Now, we had Finn O'Sullivan last week go across half-back in the second half. Took 7 intercepts, 9 possessions. Looked really good back there. Could he be the answer as another player that's a ball user off half-back, or do you just see him as more of a lockdown that will intercept?
For Finn O'Sullivan, I think he starts off half-back. I think we've seen the last few years that, our draft picks, even though they are midfielders, we're probably going to put them off half-back. In my best 22, I don't know if we're doing this later or not, but spoiler alert if we are, I've got Finn O'Sullivan and McKerr just sort of swapping roles on the wing, on the left wing. I liked Finn O'Sullivan's size. I didn't maybe know about until I saw him against the Eagles. I think he is definitely a good option down there, but it is all up to distribution. I think we've got to risk, having a Fisher or a McKercher type who doesn't defend super well. I'd rather have a guy like that trying to get the ball out of the back 50 than someone who just can't, and it just keeps coming in and we can't seem to, stop the influx of kicks coming in. Other than that, the defense is really concerned. I'm glad you gave it to Jason to tackle at the start because I don't have all the answers here because this is the most concerning line of our team. But I don't know. I think Chom, I think Chom can be that big defender. He hasn't proven anything in a one-on-one contest at all yet. But he has only played 1 year in the back line. I think he has the physical attributes to be that guy. I think he is 200 centimeters and about 100 kilos. So he's got the size to do it. But I don't know. He also was awful one-on-one, and the statistics don't lie last year. I think the worst one-on-one defender in the comp, but also one of the best interceptors. So, Griffin Logue is a massive shout for our defense in general. If he can play a really good role, he was recruited as our best defender at the time that he was recruited, because that was before Core sort of started to play a little bit better. We were all on it, get Core out of the club sort of mode then, and Chom hadn't been trialed down back, and he was really recruited as our number one guy. Now, is he good enough to be a number one guy in like a finals team? Probably not, but that's where, like Jason said, we're hoping for a Dawson or a Whitlock to come on. I think the defense individually, I think it's okay, but I just think the system and the scheme isn't correct because, Chom, Core, Logue as a 3-man prong. I don't think that's horrendous. I think that's enough to work with to be okay. And then Archer, I think he had a massive breakout year, and I think he could do the same again this year. I think he can elevate to one of the better, smaller defenders in the comp. We don't have to talk about Caleb Daniel. We know what he does. And if we can get a go to there, maybe Hardiman or O'Sullivan and McKercher make that spot their own. That's not a bad back six, but for some reason the scheme doesn't work. So if we can get the scheme and the game plan right, I think we've got the individual players to do it.
Oh, fair enough. Well, I know you didn't have the answers before, Josh, but Amanda does have all the answers. Bailey, now I've made it easy for you. I'll talk to you about. I want to get your thoughts on Luke McDonald. Now, a lot of people are calling for his head, so he's probably past it. Where do you sit on him right now?
Well, I think it's a 50-50 call at the moment as to whether he plays or not. I mean, nobody can ever question his heart and effort that he gives as one of the leaders of the club. The problem is he lost too many 50-50s so far in the preseason. His kicking, as Jason mentioned, is below average unless he's just hitting a 55-metre, dump kick. So I was really disappointed we didn't get to see Riley Hardiman feature in any of the practice games. Obviously, he was on the extended bench over at Bunbury, but didn't come on. So there's a lot of hype around him, obviously, and he's a good raking left foot user. So, I don't know. Until Goda comes back, I think we probably have to persist with McDonald. He's borderline. He'd probably be, if the 23 pick for me, probably be 22 or 23 at the moment. So, which is sad to see because he's done a great job as captain, trying to steer the club through this really dark period, and he's fronted up and tried his guts out. But unfortunately, he's just not the most skilled player. And I think if he's in our best 23 by the end of the year, we haven't taken the steps we'd hoped.
Oh, fair enough. Now I'm going to talk about the midfield mix now. Bailey, I'm going to start with you, and Jason, I'm going to finish with you because you seem to get the first one. So you're always coming in.
I was enjoying the it was working for me.
Yeah, it was working for you. But the midfield mix now. First game, it seemed like we had a different midfield for every centre bounce against Melbourne, where it seemed a lot more settled in the second game, Bailey. We had 19 CBAs for Sheasel, LDU. I think it was 16 each for Phillips, Powell. It seemed a lot more settled. How do you see this midfield mix going forward? Because we've got about 20 midfielders in the team at the moment.
Yeah, and that's going to be the key if they want to keep their spot. They've got to be able to offer something outside of just attending set of bounces and doing the grunt work there. I mean, I think LDU, Sheasel, they're both locks for the starting 2 out of the 3. And then whether you look at a Powell, Phillips, Parker,
Simpkin.
there's so many options. So they've got to be able to perform other roles. I like the idea of LDU playing deep, resting, and we see those sort of explosive. I mean, Will Day, he's not exactly explosive, but he was able to hit the scoreboard on Friday night. So that's the next level for LDU. He has to hit the scoreboard. He has to kick more goals. And he's got the attributes to do it. Like, he's explosive. He's a decent mark. So that's another one. Sheasel, obviously, he could play probably ruck and still be all Australian quality. He's that good. He's just,
please no.
He's an absolute. So, yeah, and then Parker, I mean, he can play multiple positions. Jai, I still wouldn't mind the idea of seeing Jai on a wing, but we saw in the Indigenous game, he looked back to his best. I think still a bit undervalued what he had to go through last year with his concussion and his hand injury and probably playing hurt as the good captain that he is. So, yeah, there's plenty of depth, and that's something that we haven't really had in any positions for a very long time. So, That's another good sign that, you know, if you're not playing your best, there's not going to be gifted games. And so far, good to see the development of Tom Powell and particularly Will Phil. I thought he's been quite impressive across the 2 games, getting his nose in the trough. So, yeah, competition for spots is going to be right up there. But I think LDU, Sheasel, and probably Simpkin start round 1 in the first bounce.
Fair enough. Josh, Will Phillips has had 2 good pre-season games that Bailey just mentioned him. I think he's almost a lock for round 1.
Yeah, I think he's locked. I don't see how he doesn't start, especially with Wardlaw out. If Wardlaw was there too, you know, I think he's still probably the one you could question, but his performance is, you know, completely fine. He's been good. I think he's in for a big year. I said on a podcast last night, I think that I think he's got a little bit of mongrel about him this year. He looks like he's got a little bit of arsehole about him. You know what I mean? And I think he needs that. Because he's not going to be the quickest guy. He's not going to, you know, burst out of packs, but he's the most, bar tagging, his most successful role in the team has been a little bit of in and under and a little bit of grunt work. We got a lot of grunt work in the team. We got a lot of players who can do a lot. And yes, he does have 26-inch pythons, that's for sure. But nice. I like Will Phillips, and I think he's going to have a very good year. I think he'll play most games. I didn't maybe believe that before the practice games, but he's got plenty of CBA attendances, and you know, I think he's going to be pretty much a lock in that for round 1, definitely, and hold his spot. I don't see him falling out of the team. I guess when a Wardlaw, you know, does need to come back, then there's questions, but I don't know. From what I've seen from him in the preseason, I don't know if he's the one that I'd be questioning. I don't know if there is one in that midfield that I'd be questioning. I think you might all have to do the old North Melbourne trick of, you know, play a midfielder off halfback or half forward to fit him in because we've got so many of them. So I don't really know what happens with him. I think with the midfield as a whole, and I made a comment a week ago on the pod that I got a bit of heat for, which was taken out of context, to be fair. But I think like our midfield lacks polish. If Shees or McKercher, who hasn't really played much centre bounce, you know, sort of football, aren't in there, I still worry a little bit about just the polish of the midfield. And I questioned Tom Powell's polish. I think he's stepped up a lot. And I really like Tom Powell, and he's going to be in our best 3 or 4 midfielders, absolutely. But I think he lacks a lot of polish still. There's still a lot of bombing into the 50, and he put a few out of bounds on the 4. I know the win was big on the weekend, but he's up there with LDU for just bombing along without looking. So, you know, I think the midfield as a group is really good, and we got a lot of depth, and I like the names we've got, but I still think without a little bit more polish in that midfield, or unless Powell or LDU or even Wardlaw especially can start being a little bit better by foot, I still think the midfield, maybe their potential is A instead of A+. I just think you look at like Collingwood and how successful they've been, you know, over the last 5 years, and Pendlebury's and side bottoms in there, and even Degoe's a decent field kick, and now they've got Dacos who can kick. They're just spreading it and always getting the first target they want to hit, it hits them, and we still lack that. So Phillips, to go back to Phillips, I don't think he brings that either. I don't think he's a bad disposal, but midfield as a whole, I think we need a little bit of icing on top of the cake, and then I think we can be one of the best midfields in the league in a few years.
The potential is certainly there, that's for sure. Jason Harry Sheasel spent a fair bit of time in the midfield last game. There's obviously a lot of talk about him, what his possession and best position should be. Do you like seeing him in the midfield more at this stage of his career, because he is such a good user of the football, and we do lack a lot of class and polish, especially going inside 50?
Yeah, I think based on the way that I would like us to play, I think having him in the midfield is important. He's a really important link. We know, I guess, you know, we've spoken about the lack of positive ball movement through the whole of the ground, and I think he is one that can do that. So I think for that reason he's important. You know, I think if we were a better side, I'd be much more of an advocate for playing him forward, because he's just he can play anywhere, right? Like Bailey said, we can chuck him in the ruck and I think he'll be fine. So I think for me that the way to get him most involved in our game at the moment is in the middle, and I think that's going to be fantastic for his development and also fantastic for us. And we know that we've got the flexibility with him that we can put him forward or put him even at half back for periods if we need to. And that's what, I think that's what a good midfielder is capable of doing. You can kind of fill gaps where you need to. And even if that means he's not in the centre bounce, but he starts at half forward and then essentially comes up and plays as an extra mid, like I can live with that. Because again, so long as we're getting him around the ball, I think he makes really sound decisions, and he's going to be one of the drivers that improves our position, so to speak.
Did you like his kick last week from, what was it, the wing, and he hit Finn O'Sullivan 50 metres away, straight to his advantage?
Wouldn't you? O'Sullivan didn't break step. That was an unbelievable kick, and it just goes back to that. Wouldn't you love to have three Sheezels? One forward, one mid, one back. You're never going to have something like that. Inflatable Cactus, which is an elite name, by the way. Sheezel's best position is anywhere he wants. I couldn't agree more. I just think Clarko says to him, where do you want to play this week? Who do you want to play on? Who do you want to work off? And Sheez can do it. He's an elite decision maker and kick, and he has that one-touch class, which so few of our players have. So for me, he needs to be around the footy.
Yeah, I won't say what he said after that either, Jason. Just leave it at the first sentence. You had to go at Joshy before, who was hard on Powell. Just to let you know, Inflatable Cactus, Joshy is in no mood today, so he's had a bad day.
Dean, I was gonna say, can I just say one thing to Inflatable Cactus here? Thank you for your message. I just want to clarify my Tom Powell opinion. I think Tom Powell's great, and people were messaging me saying, "Why do you hate Tom Powell? Tom Powell's improved so much." I know. The only thing I'm saying with Tom Powell is he lacks polish. Other than that, he's got every attribute we need to be a really, really good player, and he'll be in our best midfield when it comes to like a finals team or something like that. But surely we can't, I can't be the only person who thinks Tom Powell just lacks a little bit of polish. If he could imagine Tom Powell with half of Sheezel's disposal quality, that's one of the scarier players in the game. So I've never said that I don't like Tom Powell. I don't rate Tom Powell. I just think he lacks a little bit of polish on top. He's a big chunk of delicious cake. He just needs that little bit of icing on top, and then I'm sold. Give me a whole.
Can I just ask you a question, Josh? Why do you hate Tom Powell?
I just don't like him, mate.
Yeah.
I got so much hate from it.
Yeah.
I think he's not the complete package. I totally agree with you on that. I think he's guilty of bombing it long, but I mean, who isn't in our team?
I agree.
That's the problem. I think it's like we have so many players like that. He's a fantastic hand pass. He's generally a good decision maker, but I would agree he's
Thank you, Inflatable Cactus.
you forgive it, Josh. I think that there's room for improvement, no doubt.
Yeah, just a little bit. It's just a little bit of criticism. I like 99 or 95% of Tom Powell. I'm sold. I did make a video saying I'm in on Tom Powell hype. It's just that little bit of icing on top that if he could find that, and he could be that player, because he can burst out of a stoppage, win the ball, rack up possessions, get center clearances. We know that. But imagine if he did everything he's doing, plus lowered his eyes and looked for Larky's chest. LD would win a Brownlow if he could do that, and Tom Powell would elevate to another level if he could do that too. So I love you, Tom Powell. It's just a tiny bit of constructive criticism. Please don't hunt me down and hurt me.
He's a funny player because in tight, he's actually quite good. And but when he's got space, like 60, 70 metres out, he sort of, he either kicks out on a full or he probably kicks to the opposition. It's, he's a funny type of player like that. In tight, there's no one more skilled than him. But, when he gets a bit of space, he probably struggles a little bit like that. So, we'll move forward. Bailey, now, how do we integrate Jai Simpkin and Luke Parker into that midfield? Now, we want Harry Sheezel in there more, LDU, who else? Tom Powell, even though Josh isn't the biggest fan. There's a couple of others as well I probably haven't mentioned. I mean, George Ward was eventually going to come back in there. Will Phillips. How do we integrate them, or do we have to play them in different positions?
Yeah, well, that's sort of what I was speaking about before. You have to be multifaceted. You have to be able to play a different position. And I know Josh has had a bad day, but I do disagree. I think Will Phil is a really good user, particularly over 30 metres, and a really good handballer. But I suppose that's going to be the interesting thing about how we find the balance, because we're going to be playing sort of the Bulldog style, 10 mids, and it's whether they're going to be able to be effective in other positions. So we saw Simpkin struggle at times last year, playing a half forward, not getting involved. I mean, Parker's had a history of doing it at Sydney. I think an underrated part of his game is that he can go on an intercepting defender as well. We saw him spend time on like Aliir and do it effectively as well. But and then Sheasel, I mean, like if we can get him forward and actually get decent inside 50s, then we're going to score more often than not because he's so crafty. He can get a goal out of nothing. His goal assist work is incredible as well. So, and then we haven't even really spoken about Colby McKercher and whether he will attend any centre bounces. So we've definitely got a lot of depth in that position. But we got to make sure as a side we're not taking away from our other two lines and that we don't have players at half forward just sitting there, not being effective and applying pressure as well, and defenders that are going to be found out one-on-one. So that's why I'd personally go with Finn O'Sullivan off half-back instead of Colby. He's better defensively. He's that bigger size as well, and he's a great user. I mean, so is Colby, but I think just having the extra help for Daniel down there will be pivotal. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Clarko goes with the mix. He's got plenty of chess pieces there. It's how he's going to arrange them, and hopefully we see him back with his magic.
Bailey, do you think there's a chance that it's better to play Shees off half forward and Simpkin in the middle? Because I feel like, I think Simpkin could maybe produce more in the middle. And I think with his form, especially in that Indigenous All-Stars game, he looked so good. They play a lot of Harry Shees off half forward, especially in that D's game. Do you think that might be a better balance for the team to start him off half forward, let Jai do a little bit of the grunt work, and Shees can run straight off half forward into the guts and receive the ball to then dispose?
Yeah, I think that's a great call. I mean, generally we see now anyway an extra half forward come up to the stoppage. So you'd probably send Sheasel up there anyway. But, we've seen Jai can be damaging at centre clearance. And, yeah, hoping Sheasel can play that sort of role. I mean, he'll do it well. We see it, just to switch over to the AFLW program, like a Jenna Bruton, how she goes up as the extra mid in the stoppage as well. So just because he's at half forward doesn't mean he's not going to be around the ball and around the clearance. But I like the idea of having Simpkin there because I think Sheasel can play the half forward role a lot better. And then also there's something about having your captain in there for the centre bounce as well.
Yeah, I agree.
And the leadership that he provides. So I think that's a really good idea. And it's going to be take probably a few rounds to find out what the perfect mix is. But I suppose we're lucky that we're not having the issue of we're saying, oh, geez, who are we going to play in the midfield?
Yeah.
We've got plenty of options that we know will be able to make an impact. So something we haven't had for a long time.
Jason, your thoughts on Jai Simpkin and Luke Parker? Where do you want to see them in the team?
I think the fact that we've got these two mature players that can play both positions says to me that the most logical thing is that probably one of them is going to be in the midfield and one of them is going to be at half forward most of the time. I definitely would prefer to see Jai spending more time in the midfield than he did last year. The second half of the year, he spent a lot more of his time in the midfield, and I think we saw that he was better for it. I guess the only caveat I would put on that is, I think we want to be putting players in the position that's best for the side, not best for them as individuals. So, maybe we could get more out of Luke Parker if he was in the midfield, but I think probably for the most part, he's going to be better for us if he's spending more time at half forward. I think that's kind of where the thinking that I go through. I think ultimately they're probably going to rotate between the two of them, and I don't think we'll see a lot of time at all where both of them are in the middle. I think it's going to be one or the other. But I think for me, it's going to be looking at it early in the season and seeing which of it works best for us, the side, and in terms of who spends more time forward and more time mid.
Oh, fair enough. Josh, we got your thoughts on Jai Simpkin. You want to see him in the midfield a little bit more. What about Luke Parker? Where do you want to see him?
Yeah, definitely in the forward line to start. I think, especially being a little bit older, he's got plenty of footy left in him, Luke Parker, I think, especially this day and age. You can sort of play pretty well to your mid-30s. But I think I'd like to see him off half forward or be in that forward line and be almost like that pressure player. I mean, I'm sure we'll come to the forward line in a second, but There's some questions around some of the fringe guys there, and I think maybe he could feel a little bit of that gap. I sort of want to see Luke Parker playing that half forward, or pushing into the forward line and kicking goals role. And then if it is a tight game, we are under the cosh or need a steadier, I want to see him go into the midfield. Just like that. I mean, the Pies game is a perfect example. The Fremantle game last year is another one. Even the Eagles game's late. If we'll start him half forward, and if we're cooking and we're looking good, no need to chuck him into the guts. But if we need a proper leader, we need a clearance, and we have to rely on someone, I still think he can be the guy we rely on in tight games, and someone needs to come up clutch, So I want to see him play 80% forward and maybe go into the middle, maybe not 80, you know what I mean? Majority forward, and then go into the middle when we really, really need him. But let the young guys figure it out until they're not on it that game.
I think 80-20 is perfect, Josh.
You reckon?
Yeah.
Fair.
That's the interesting one. I mean, there's going to be periods where he probably does have to go into midfield, especially if we're getting bullied because we don't have that big body with George Wardlaw missing the first half of the year. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how we go. Patrick Allwood's come in and sort of said he's publicly stated that he's working on a forward midfield mix, and Inflatable Cactus has written him off almost. I hope Parker's been second gear this preseason because he hasn't got my juices flowing
Inflatable
yet.
Cactus, why do you hate Tom? Why do I hate Tom Power? Why do you hate Luke Parker? That's what I'm actually back with. What's with the Parker hate, mate? Come on.
Don't worry, Cactus. Your juices will be fully flowing round one.
Okay, well, we're getting a bit off subject here. We'll start an OnlyFans one next week. So
Yep.
we'll go to forward
I'm not
line.
doing it shirtless, Dean. I don't care what you say.
Well, we'll see how we go. If it's for charity, you might. Who knows? So.
Yeah, depends which.
Forward line. Bailey, I'm going to stick with you. Jack Darling has probably been a surprise packet so far this year. I think he's a lock for round one, but he's looked pretty good. I mean, he showed a lot of signs last week with maturity and a smart football brain, which is very rare if you play for North Melbourne, especially at first mark inside forward 50. He just protected the space in front of him and took a nice chest mark, and it's going to be a good second four for Nick Larkey, I think. How do you see him so far?
I agree. I'll put my hand up and say I wasn't completely sold on the trade, and the fact that he got dropped from West Coast side last year and they were putting out worse 22s than us was really concerning. But so far, he looks really fit. I've loved the way he's hit up and been that link from our D50 as well. He's got the biggest shoulders I've ever seen on a football player, so he's obviously strong as an ox. He's presenting really well. He's generally a pretty good kick, so I'll give him an out last week in the wind. But yeah, he's also got a really good record at Marvel, so we're looking forward to see him under the lid. But yeah, I think he's impressed a lot of North fans. He's done everything he's had to do, probably the opposite of Parker that Cactus was mentioning before, who seems like he might have just be, not worrying too much about February football, whereas Darling's come all guns blazing and really impressed North fans early. And looking forward to seeing him team up and take some pressure off Nick, and hopefully allows him to get less 3-on-1s that he was getting last year and getting mauled. So, yeah, he's looking really dangerous, which is what we've all hoped, and can be a dangerous forward line with him, Zerha and Paul Curtis, all really dangerous one-on-one players.
No, definitely. Jason, with that forward line, Nick Larkey, I've noticed, has been pushing up the field a fair bit, especially last week against West Coast. I feel like he was getting a lot of possessions on the wing, high half forward. Did you like that, just to add a bit of a different mix in that forward 50 if he's up the ground?
I don't mind it at times. I certainly wouldn't want to see him playing that high centre-half forward role permanently, but I think, if Darling's in the ruck, for example, and isn't able to play that higher up the ground option, I think it makes sense for Larkey to push up. We know that Paul Curtis can play a dangerous, full forward role if need be. Zerha also should be able to do that. And I think even Parker could do that. Even, I'm just going to keep listing players now, like LDU is another one that I think can play that deep forward role when he's resting as well. So I don't mind seeing Larkey move up, for the odd occasion, but I think he needs to be more often than not our deepest forward marking option, because we see, if he does mark it on the wing, invariably he's looking for a short kick sideways so that he can sprint up the other end and then try and get the next mark, because he knows that that's our best option. So I'd prefer him closer to goal. That's where he does his best work. But I think there's going to be times during the game that we want to see him move up the ground a little bit more, depending on what else is happening.
No, definitely. I think Bailey might have cut out, unless he wasn't happy with your answer there, Jason. I'm not too sure, and he's just walked away.
I nearly cut out too, Dean, after that answer.
Yeah, fair enough too, Josh. Now, small forward battle, Josh. That's something that's always been a bit of an Achilles heel for us over the last few years. We've both seen Costanti and Hanson Jr. into the team for the first two preseason games, but I assume one of them is going to miss out with Jai Simpkin and Luke Parker coming into round one. Which one do you favour at the moment?
Hanson Jr. for me, I think he's shown more. I do like Constanti's tackle pressure, but at the moment, from what I've seen, look, it's a very small sample size after 3 intra-club and a couple of preseason games, but it feels like we do have another Kane Turner on our hands with Constanti. And, every player in the AFL should be able to tackle. I don't care if you don't defend or whatever's going on. I just think every player should be able to tackle. And for me, if you're not a goal threat, and you're playing in the forward line, at least a little bit of a goal threat. I just don't understand. Maybe it is because we're a lower side and we have a lot of holes defensively, so we need to play someone like Constanti. But realistically, no. I would definitely be putting Eddie Ford over him. And if it is one of the two, and I don't think he can play Constanti or Robert Hanson Jr., I definitely think Robert Hanson has earned his spot more than Constanti. I like some of the tackles he's laid, but I think he got 3 touches against the Eagles. So it's just not enough to earn a spot in this side. And if you're a player like Eddie Ford, who unfairly, in my opinion, hasn't even got a run out really in the ones, you're looking at Constanti and going, I can do that plus kick 3 a game on my day. So why aren't I getting a crack? He can play wing. He can push down to halfback and receive marks. I just don't get it. So look, out of those 2 you named, Hanson Jr. by pretty comfortably for me, but it is an interesting battle down for the small forwards.
It definitely is. Inflatable Cactus has said we haven't had a decent tip rat since Thomas. It breaks my heart. Well, hopefully your heart is mended. Bailey, you're back. You left us there for a period of time. I don't know where. You might be on your mobile phone now. So what are your thoughts on I'll go like Josh mentioned Eddie Ford. Have we got too many mids going through the team now, which is making it hard for someone like a genuine forward, like Eddie Ford, who should be in the best 22, miss out on the team?
Yeah, apologies. My laptop went flat, so I'm on my phone now. So sorry to everyone out there. Yeah, it's a really good point you make about having too many forwards, because we saw he was a bit of a chain player getting up the ground and getting involved, and he's got the class and the goal nous as well. But I remember hearing that he was Champion Data had him rated poor for pressure, and that was a bit of a problem with his game last year. So that's why I reckon that they're trying to get Constanti into the team. But as Josh mentioned, you can't be having 3 disposals playing the whole game. Like, you've got to be able to make an impact as well. We saw that for too long with my man Kane Turner. That was just, really good pressure, but you've got to be damaging when you get the ball, and that's what all the Giants little tip rats do so well. So yeah, I think Elvis is going to struggle just because we see the Parkers, the Sheasels, the Simpkins, even the Powers at times that'll rest at half forward line when they can't get in the midfield, so he's been squeezed out. But I am another one who would have liked to at least seen him given an opportunity to prove his case in one of the 2 hitouts.
It would have been nice. You looked good in the pre-season game, intra-club game, I should say, not the pre-season game, intra-club game where he played for the B team, push it up the field. So he definitely does have that role, and he does look good. It did look good inside the forward 50 in the pre-season as well. So it's going to be interesting. He will get his opportunity. I wouldn't mind talking to you boys about a few fringe players. Jason, Dylan Stevens, he's had a little bit surprised that he has probably come in for the first 2 pre-season games. Does he excite you, and do you think he plays round 1?
Whatever the opposite of excite, that's what he does to me. Like, I don't hate him like Josh hates Tom Powell, but I just...
You're talking about my guy, Dylan Stevens, right now, mate, so be careful.
I just think he's one of those players that, if he comes in, he's going to get 15 touches on the wing and sort of do a job, but he's not going to change the game either way. I think early last season, there was a few moments where he didn't go back with a flight where he should have, and he kind of took a misstep with his physicality. I think we've seen the second half of last year, and and even the couple of games this year, I do think he's tidied that part of his game up. I've seen him put his body on the line a few times, but yeah, no, he doesn't excite me. I wouldn't be surprised if he sneaks into the side or if he's the sub. But I just think he's one of those players that unless something dramatic changes, he's a bit of a, he might play another 20 games and sort of be a good depth player, but not necessarily going to take us forward, unfortunately. But you need those kind of players by the same token.
Good depth player at this stage.
I think so. At this stage, things can change, but at this stage, that's what it looks like.
It doesn't get the juices flowing as the inflatable cactus would say.
No,
that's for sure.
it does not.
But we'll see how we go. Josh, Taylor Goad got a couple. He got a game last week? They got a game against Melbourne. Still showed a lot of improvement in the last 12 months. Still has a way to go with his body and physicality. You've been happy with how he's progressed in the last 12 months. He's come a long way, I feel.
Yeah, the unicorn. I love him. I think he's had as big of improvement. What's this going on here? Does Josh really? No, I don't dislike that. Stop spreading rumors, you lot. I think Taylor Goad's had as big of an improvement as Tristan Xerri. Obviously, don't mean that he's as good, but from what he was to what he is now is night and day. Joel, who I get on the pod a little bit, raves about him, and he was on him very, very, very early. He's a bit of a draft expert, Joel, and yeah, I like what I'm seeing from him. I don't think he plays this year, barring injury. I don't really see. I think Teakle and players like that will get opportunity ahead of him, but I really like what the trajectory of Taylor Goad could be. I think I really like him. I'd like to see him play forward a little bit. I think I wish I got to see him play forward a little bit in that Demons game, or if he got another opportunity, even in the intra club, I would have liked to see him get thrown forward, because if we saw a little bit of forward craft from him, I think eventually Xerri's going to be the ruckman of this team for the next 5+ years, So he's pretty locked into his spot. If Tom Powell, now I got Tom Powell in my brain. If Taylor Goad has a chance of getting in this team in the next 3 years, he's got to learn to play beside Xerri. And I want to give him a chance at half forward to see if he can take those marks. He's 208 centimeters, get some size behind him and see if he can kick a goal. Even though I think his best position will be ruck, but it'd be nice to see, almost like a Luke Jackson. I know this isn't the best ruck combination ever, but Luke Jackson and Darcy situation from Freo. They're very different ruckmen, but how can we get two talented guys into the team? I don't think Taylor Goad is going to play this year, maybe not even next year. But I love the improvement, and he's gone from being Jacob Edwards to we might have a player on our hands here.
We're getting a lot of comments coming through here, so thanks to all those boys. Powell had heaps of good things to say about Josh at the intra club. Jared Davidson.
There's a lot of mayo on this, guys, in the comments. Please don't take this seriously.
The inflatable cactus says he doesn't get the juices flowing for Dylan Stephens, but someone that does get the juices flowing for inflatable cactus is Darcy Tucker Bailey. Now, he's had a few different roles. He started halfback last week, looked okay. He hasn't been too bad, but where do you see him? Do you see him on the fringes as well?
Well, I think you can only play one of he or McDonald. I don't think you can have both of them.
They're going to play both of them, Bailey. They're going to do it.
They will. Yeah, but I think they will probably, but I don't think they should. I think you can only play one of those types. I think neither of them offer enough with the football, and that's where today's game's heading. You've got to be able to have good use coming outside of your D50s. So I think my gut says that Tucker will probably play over McDonald when they do make that decision. That's what I would probably do. I think I thought he had some really good moments against West Coast last week, and then he had the horrendous moment in the match sim where he got clean bowled by the ball and Melbourne got out the back and got a goal. So that's the sort of thing you can see with Tucker. I mean, to take out of his last game last year, we played on one of the most dangerous forwards in Dylan Moore and kept him to about 3 disposals till 3/4 time when that had about 100 inside 50s. So that was just only because I was there. So that sticks out to my mind. But yeah, I think he's definitely another one on the fringes, and another one that you'd hope by the end of the year that your Goaders, your Hardemans can cement their spot, and that he's just becomes a nice depth player, break in case of injury, and is spending more time in the twos than not.
That's sort of where he's at, and that's where we want to go to. Yeah, I mean he's 29 now, and we want to get that. Like you said, a Hardeman Goater stepping up and taking his role. That's for sure. I'll get each of your boys' opinions on this next individual, and that's Colby McKercher. We talked a little bit about him earlier. Jason, how have you seen his role? He's played a high half forward, almost looked a little bit lost on occasions. But do you like that role? Would you like to see him on a wing or half back again?
He certainly looked lost when he took those 5 bounces and then shinned it to 5 minutes in front of him, which was unfortunate. I personally, I'd like to see him more so on the wing. I think he could spend some time through halfback, but I'd prefer to see him sort of one cog up the field from where he was last year. I think usually he's a good ball user, and he's got that speed to break the lines, which I think is a super important trait to have through the middle part of the ground. So I don't mind him sort of moving towards half forward, but I would prefer that he was, essentially just running between the arcs and providing overlap and also providing some defensive pressure, getting into those right spots. But I feel like one of the themes of this pod's been that flexibility. Potentially, if he does play some more half forward time, we develop some capacity for him in that area. I just don't think he has that yet. But I mean, how many players in our side could you say that about? It's there's a fair few.
Yeah, the majority of them. So yeah, that's fair enough. Josh, I can't remember what you said earlier. I think we talked about him earlier. Maybe you did. I can't remember now. What's going on in the chat? So I'm getting a bit distracted. Where do you like his role this year? Do you want to see him across halfback again, or are you quite happy to trial him as a high half forward, getting the ball in the centres or around there and kicking the ball inside forward 50 because he is an elite kick, isn't he?
Yeah, half-back wing, it has to be. We've already spoken so much about the gluttony of half forwards and Eddie Ford and Zane Dersman not being in this team on top of that. I just don't know why we want to clog up that area of the ground. He's the only player really in this team that I trust to break the lines. I mean, Goater could do it if he comes in eventually. I think Zach Fisher has the potential to do it, but he hasn't shown that his disposal is good enough to be doing that, but he's a quick player. Even if he's off half back, as we saw against the Gold Coast on the left wing, he can be half back and end up on half forward anyway. And I think that's where we need it to be. We need players behind the ball to drive it forward. That's such a massive issue in this team. So, yeah, I don't really like the half forward experiment. I'd rather she's on a half forward and McKercher sort of doing that half back and wing role, chopping out in the center bounces every now and then for sure to get him some midfield time. But, he's probably the only player in the whole team that I trust to get the ball off halfback and run and break the lines and get to half forward still having the ball. So I'm pretty firm on it. I think, I don't like the half forward thing. Wing or halfback for me. I do think by the end of this season, though, we're going to be talking about him Harry Sheezel levels. I think he'll be top 3 or 4 in our best and fairest. I think he's got as much talent as a Shees, and I'm a little bit filthy he wasn't in Rising Star contention last year. I think that's pretty poor by whoever votes on it because they clearly didn't watch enough of us, and rightly so. We're rubbish, but hey, he was much better and much more consistent than Harley Reid, I thought. So look, I love Colby McKercher. I think he's got A grade written all over him. He's a very unique individual in our team. We need more players like that. But wing halfback for me, and we need his run and his disposal behind the ball.
Yeah, we need like 3 of him, to be honest with you. At the moment, you've pretty much said it in those words. Bailey, anything different there? Do you like seeing him across half forward, or are you like Josh and probably just want him a bit behind the ball?
I'd prefer to see him wing. I'm really bullish on his talent. I could see him making a similar impact to an Errol Goulden. In using that lethal left foot. If we get he and Sheezel kicking inside 50, then oh my god, the forwards won't know what hit them because they're both such elite users. I think in a couple of years' time he'll probably be a full-blooded midfielder, but it's going to be very interesting to see where they play him. But he's as fit as a fiddle. He's determined. I've had a few conversations with him across the off season, and I'm cannot wait to see what he produces because he's got such a high level of talent, as Josh mentioned, that he's almost on that Sheezel level, which should be unreachable. But to have 2 of them so talented and so driven as well. I'm really looking forward to see him. And yeah, I agree with your comments that he did look a little bit lost across half forward. So hopefully he gets to that wing if Sullivan goes to half back, or even if he plays off half back. We saw how explosive, and for the kicks he was taking, he was going at extraordinary disposal efficiency rate as well. So another one I expect to have a pretty big year.
I certainly hope so. A lot of comments coming in. It seems to be almost going towards Josh a little bit. So there's a bit. Jason, any other players you want to talk about before I get some predictions from you boys?
I guess it's interesting because, like I mentioned before, we didn't get to see many of those fringe players in the 2 games against opposition sides. So I would have loved to see someone like Will Dawson or Matt Whitlock, play some real opposition. I'm not expecting that they're going to play too many games this year, but I think it's important that we get them in where we can. We saw Will Dawson played, I think, 3 games last year when there were some injuries, and I think it's important just to give them that little taste. So I'm hoping that we can do that as the year goes on. If invariably there's going to be some injuries, so you try and see a positive in those injuries and blood a player here or there. And we've mentioned Riley Hardeman a couple of times. I know he's someone that I think gets probably mentioned far too much based on how much AFL football he's played, but I do think if he was able to get fit and have a solid run at it, he could really unlock some things for us, because to me he's kind of like, in theory, he's an upgrade on that Tucker and McDonald position because he can defend and he's a good kick. It's just whether or not he can get his game to the AFL level consistently to do that. But I guess they're the kind of moves that I hope we start to see as the season goes on.
Fair enough. Josh, good question here. Oh, not so much a question, but an individual player. Finbar Malley got a game against Melbourne, looked okay. Good set of hands. Not against Melbourne, it was more of the intra-club match. Good set of hands. Obviously, kicking
Came
a
on
goal.
Last quarter against Melbourne, I think.
Yeah, didn't do much. The ball was hardly down there, but the intra-club match, he looked quite solid. Good set of hands. Kicking for goal is the issues. We certainly hope that we can get some games into him this year, don't we?
Yeah, I think so, but I don't have much hope for Finbar getting a game this year. I think Teakle gets a game ahead of him. I think they're more likely to throw Chom back forward than giving Finbar a game. I think, once again, this is going to be a player everyone thinks I hate, but I do like the potential of Finbar, but he is undrafted and probably for a reason. I think he's got very raw attributes, and I almost feel like we're doing a little bit of a Tyler Sellers thing again, where, we don't have much hope up forward for a lot of players. I'm shocked that Whitlock isn't being played as a forward. I think that's an awful decision with Pink and Callum Dawson and Will Dawson also being down there on top of the 3 that are going to start. So, I would much rather throw Whitlock on top of Teakle and Chom forward than probably giving Finbar a game. I'm definitely not saying Finbar won't amount to anything. I like the raw attributes there, but if we're looking at it more realistically, I think there's other more experienced and high potential players that would be thrown forward first. And I don't think he plays AFL this year. I don't know. I just don't know if I see it fully. You know what I mean? His marking is fantastic, but he's never taken a mark in the AFL because he's never got a game. And is that going to translate? I don't know. I think there's a little bit of Tyler Sellers about it. I think he probably has higher potential than Tyler Sellers, but I don't know if that's just because he's on the list and he takes some marks and that sort of stuff. But maybe I'm underselling it a little bit, but I would prefer to see Whitlock, Chom, and Teakle up in that forward line than Finbar. If he has a fantastic year in the VFL, kicks 30 goals in the VFL and takes marks for fun, then absolutely deserves his place. But I just don't think I've seen enough yet. I think we're clutching at straws a little bit with him getting a game this year.
If I can jump in there, like he's kind of like the anti-Nick Larkey. Like he's a absolutely beautiful mark, but he cannot kick a goal to save his life. So I think that's the big thing for me is, sure, I actually think I've got no doubt that he could translate his marking to AFL level, because I think he reads the ball really well and he's got great hands, but he can't kick. Like we've seen that time and time again. He's not even VFL level standard kicking. And so for me, it's like, sure, we'll get him in, but then he's going to kick 2 or 3 points each
Yeah.
game, and we're going to be wondering what we're doing. Whereas Larky's going to, mark it a couple of times and kick a goal every time. Obviously unfair to compare him to Larky, but I think the comparison makes sense. He really is going to have to come along in leaps and bounds with his kicking, I think, if he's going to get a game and stay on the list long term.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I would be hoping, and you guys let me know if you agree with this, I would want Teakle ahead of him in a heartbeat. I think Teakle, he's only 24 years old. I'm not saying he's going to turn into anything special, but I think for no preseason with North, I know he had a preseason at the Pies, but playing waffle, I believe, coming in and kicking a goal a game and cementing his place in the team second half of the year, he deserves a shot before a lot of those guys. And I think he's a player at 24 years old who's AFL size and ready. We know he can take marks at AFL level. We know he can kick goals. He deserves an opportunity, I think, before anyone else in that forward line. Him or Whitlock. I don't really know if I want to see Chom forward. That's sort of a break glass in case of emergencies thing. But him or Whitlock should be getting first crack at that forward role if Darling is injured or doesn't translate his preseason stuff into the season.
Oh, I don't think he'll get a game early, Finbar Malley, but I don't think Jack Darling's going to play every game this year as well. So the opportunity can present itself if he is good enough at VFL level.
Can I ask you, Dean, sorry, really quickly, why do people think Jack Darling's not going to play 22 plus games? Because I don't see why he won't. He's so fit. He's never injured. He played 22 last year. I don't know. I think he might miss a game or two maybe, but other than that, I reckon he's playing 22 at least. I don't really know. He's not 36. He's 32, 33 years old. Like, I don't see why he doesn't play nearly every game. That's all. What's your opinion on that?
I think they'll rest him for games. That's my opinion, because they'll try and preserve the longevity of him.
If he's in good form, though, and he's playing like he's playing in the preseason, do you still drop him, or do you have to just keep rolling with him? And if he keeps doing it for 22 plus games, I guess that's a good thing. But yeah, no, it's just interesting. I just think he'll play a lot of games. That's all. But no, just seeing what you think.
Well, yeah, I just think they're going to rest him.
Do you rest him for games we're not going to win, or do you rest him again for easy games that we might have someone step up in?
Oh, I suppose that's why they've got sports science people. They might want to,
You're the Oracle, Dean. Give me the answers, mate.
I got no idea, to be honest. Let's say he'll play 22 games plus finals. So what's that, 25, 26? So yeah.
Sure. Kick his 40th in the grand final and make Corns run the 10.
Yeah. Oh, yes, that'll be nice. That's for sure. Bailey, did you want to talk about any other players? We've talked about Finbar Maley. Josh isn't a fan. As much as
and Tom Powell.
Yeah, and Tom Powell. Did you want to mention anyone else?
No, who do you hate, Bailey?
On Finbar, I think it's worth noting that he actually finished second in the VFL Best and Fairest last year. I mean,
really?
Airily, he's really good, and even the quarter he came on against the D's, it was a nice change because when we were bombing it long, he doesn't get outmarked. He creates a contest, but the biggest issue with him and the thing that he needs to be spending at least half an hour after every session is his set shot goal kicking, because the first one or two times we might be able to give the little looping handball to a Sheasel, but teams have gotten a cotton on really quick, and his kicking is a worry, but I like what he can do aerially. He's a big aerial threat, so if he can clean up his kicking, I think what he can offer with his leap is more than what Teakle can. But Teakle's probably offers more as a second ruckman. So I'm not as putting a line through Finbar at all that he won't play. I think there's probably a chance he'll get to play when the matchups are right. But I think he's probably had a better season in the VFL last year than what we really think when we look back on it. Like, obviously second in the Best and Fairest. So he's going to be an interesting one to watch for sure.
No, definitely. I'm looking forward to seeing him in the VFL, actually. He does crash packs hard. He's got a good set of hands. So, yeah, it was interesting in that Melbourne game last quarter that they did try the three tall forwards with him, Darling and Larky. Unfortunately, the ball never got down there, so we didn't really see it to full use. But we'll see how we go.
Another player I want to touch on and get your thoughts on. Stop me if we mention him while I had my brief sabbatical. But have we talked about Zane Dersma?
No, we haven't. No, go for it. You can mention him.
I just think it's worth noting. I'm keen to hear your guys' thoughts about his role in the side. As we've mentioned, we've got those sort of medium forwards and the midfielders that'll be resting at half forward. how many games do you guys expect him to play? And what were your thoughts on the intra-club when we saw him play a bit of midfield time and a bit in the VFL last year? Do you think he can become an out-and-out mid, or is he going to be that sort of third or fourth tall that has that nice leap?
Jeez, how many more midfielders can we get through there? That's the issue there, Bailey. Yeah, he did look good in that, I think it was the intra-club game, but he has had an interrupted pre-season with shoulder injuries, and he was injured the last game as well. So he'll start in the VFL. We're certainly hoping after a few weeks he can get some opportunities. But, while we're on him, Jason, where do you see his long-term future? Do you see him as a Nathan Fyfe type that did go through the midfield in his early 20s and push forward as he got a bit older, or do you see him purely as a half-forward?
Yeah, geez, wouldn't it be nice if we had a Nat 5 type? Yeah, I think I don't see him as a full-time midfielder ever, but I definitely could see him as a, someone like, he's not the same type of player, but Jordan De Goey's kind of midfield forward split. I think he could play both of those sort of 50-50 potentially. I didn't necessarily see that last year, but like I said earlier on, I think what we saw from him in the intra-club is he's absolutely got that capacity to play inside in and around the ball. And we saw him last year. He's a fantastic mark, particularly when he's running across from the side of a pack. He can take a really good pack mark. So I think long-term, he's going to be that player that causes trouble for opposition because you don't necessarily know where we're going to play him. But I think he should be kind of a forward line midfield sort of 50-50 split. It's interesting thinking, like I haven't really given it any thought beyond my mind right now, but the fact that he is such a good mark drifting across a pack makes me also wonder if he could play an intercepting defender type of role. No idea if that's in his skill set, but certainly his marking would align with that. So I think he could be anything. I think that's the great thing about a player with his size and his speed and attributes. He could be anything. It's just what we decide to turn him into. And I guess the worry there is our development in the past or in the last several years hasn't been great. I think we've got some new staff through there now, and it's looking more promising. But that's probably going to be the big deciding factor for him. Where do we want to develop him, and how do we give him that opportunity? So long way to say. I think he's a half-time midfielder, half-time forward, but we'll see.
Yeah, Josh, what are your thoughts on him? Do you see him progressing into that midfield eventually? That's going to be tricky. With the plethora of midfielders we've got on the list, or do you see him maybe, like Jason says, where a player might be struggling as a default, we put him a half back?
I think a lot of it depends on if he can develop size. Like, I could maybe see him playing that De Goey type role, what we maybe think Zurhaar should be, but obviously he's got a bit more explosion about him and a bit more hang time and athleticism. Like, I don't know. This all goes back to drafting the best player over what you need. And obviously, I'm not going to start talking about Nick Watson or him, but if we did go to Nick Watson, we wouldn't be having a discussion if he makes the team or not. You know what I mean? Now, that being said, will Dersma turn out to be the better player? Very potentially, yes, because I think his upside is as good as anyone's in that draft. Positionally, I honestly, we have so many of every position he could possibly play on the ground. I don't really know. I think if he can develop size, I can see him going into that midfield, but then it makes me worry about he's just going to be another one of those guys who wins the ball like an LD or a Power, but just bombs it long. Like, I don't know if I see composure in his game. But if he can develop a bit of that, maybe if he puts on enough size, can he be that? He's not going to say he's going to be like a Ben Cunnington, but a bit like that Nat Fyfe bull in the middle, potentially. But I don't know how big he can get. Honestly, if I was betting money on it, I think he'll be a forward. And I think he'll be a high marking forward, an X factor forward, and could almost be that third tall, maybe slightly undersized tall that their marking ability makes up for. He's almost like, I don't know if this is a good comparison. Everyone can roast me for this, but he's almost like a much higher potential Tim Membry, where I think he's a slightly undersized guy who can take a great mark, and can kick goals, but his potential is A grade instead of being a very solid player in Tim Membry, but not much more. So don't think I'm saying he's going to be Tim Membry. I know how the comments go, but I hate him too, apparently. But I don't know. I see him more as a forward over moving into the midfield unless he can really start bulking up and get a little bit of, almost like I'm saying about Tom Powell, a little bit of polish or icing on top. I don't know if we need more of those bullies in the middle because Wardlaw's coming back, Powell, LDU, Simpkin is that as well. Throw Ozerha in there if you want and Simpkins and stuff. It's a lot of the same type, I think.
Yeah,
go on, bud.
Just to butt in quickly, I think it's worth noting that his player comparison when he got drafted, not that they, are the be all and end all, but was Toby Green. And you watch a lot of his under 18 highlights and the way he was able to hit packs, crumbing and sort of goals through general play and just craft were really impressive. So, yeah, I think that's probably where he goes. And I always find it interesting, the Nick Watson chat. Like, yes, he's doing great things, kicked 30 goals at Hawthorn, but can you imagine if he was playing in our forward line? He'd look like Jack Marnie because we just bomb it long and hope for the best. So he's a product of the style of football that they play. So it'd be interesting to see how he goes long term. And obviously he's doing a great job so far at Hawthorn, but I think Zane as well, when we get a better team, I think he will be like the cream on top, the polish and the finish that Josh was mentioning. So, yeah, hopefully he gets a few looks at it this year, and I've no doubt he will.
Yeah, look, I think he starts in the reserves to start the year, just only because he's had an interrupted pre-season, but we certainly expect to see him during the course of the year and getting a few games and developing through that. Now, boys, I'm going to get some predictions from all you guys before we finish up. I'll start with you, Jason. Best and fairest this year?
Oh, it's pretty hard to go past Shees. It's it's Shees or sort of maybe it's LDU if he has a really good contract year. But I think I'll just go the safe bet, Harry Sheezel.
Josh?
I'm probably along a similar line there. Sheezel's as long as he plays all the games, I don't know how it can't be him. I think if he played every game, he probably wins it last year too. So, yeah, it's probably Sheezel. I think Caleb Daniel can be a problem in there. I don't think he'll win it, but I just want to give him a shout out as well. I think he'll be top 5 and be one of our most, if not our most important player. Jerry is another guy to watch out for, but and you guys let me know if you think I'm wrong here, but I also kind of feel, and I've had my beef with Tristan in the past, but I think he's a lock and top 3 ruckman, if not the best, and robbed of All Australian last year. But if a ruckman's in our top 3 best and fairest this season, maybe we haven't elevated to the heights that we could have, because I would be hoping that McKercher and LDU and maybe not a Phil O'Sullivan yet, but other players like that are becoming the players we think they are. If he's up there, it means he's had a fantastic year, but I think he's a shout for it, but I would maybe hope those other core guys with, your young core elevate above him and make the top 3 up.
Fair enough. What about you, Bailey? Anything different there?
I could easily say Sheezel, but I'm not going to, just for the sake of it. But big shout out to the Big Chief from my podcast and his favourite. I'm going to go Tristan Sherry. I mean, Clarko loves players with grunt and that compete, and he's going to do what he did last year with the 10 clearances, 10 tackles a game. So I'm going to go for a different one. I'm going to pick Big X to win the SID.
I think he'll be right up there, especially if he's anything like last year. He's almost a bit stiff not to win it last year, to be honest. But yeah, he was absolutely brilliant. So yeah, that's actually a really good one. I'm going to go Tom Powell and Finbar Melly as my top 2 there.
My most hated players. If they get a game, Dean.
Yeah, they will. Don't worry about that. Straight in. What about this one's probably a little bit of an easy one, Jason. Best first-year player.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, again, Finn O'Sullivan's pretty hard to go past. I just can't see any of the other first-year players playing enough games to compete with him. So I think it'd have to be Finn, but I'm sure we will see. Well, I mean, we haven't spoken about Luke Urquhart at all. He's probably unlikely to get a game, but he also looked pretty good in that intra-club match playing for the opposition side. So, look, you never know, but I think Finn would be the logical pick there.
I can't see Luke Urquhart getting a game only because we've got about 25 midfielders in the team already. So that's probably the only thing there. What about you, Josh, yeah, I'm trying to find you. Josh, anything different?
Oh, is it just the draft picks or the first year players like the recruits we got as well?
Why don't we go recruits as well? Because it'll be a bit different. Because we might as well. Sorry, Jason.
No, I was just asking. Jack Darling. Jack Darling. I think he's so impressive. And when we made that trade, I was hot on it and I really liked it. I thought the criticism was maybe a little bit unfair. People acting like he's 36 and limping, but he did play 22 last year, kicked a goal a game, most tackles inside the forward 50 for the Eagles. And I just thought he's 32, just turned 33, I think. So he's got plenty to offer the next couple of years. And I think he's shown what he can do. And I think that's going to be one of the most important cogs, making our midfield and forward line, and even getting it out of defense with him pushing up the ground, work a lot stronger. So I'll go Jack Darling. I didn't see a world where we'd be doing this preseason pod and Luke Parker's probably the least impressive out of the new recruits, but I'll go with my man and Marnie's favorite player as well. Shout out Marnie to Jack Darling.
Well, shout him on a channel, YouTube channel. Yeah, so definitely check that out. Bailey, anything different?
Yeah, I'll go Caleb Daniel. Don't need to elaborate on it much.
Yeah, true.
I'll lock him in.
Yeah, fair enough. Jason, did you want to add someone different now, or
I'll back Finn in. I'll back Finn O'Sullivan. I think he's.
I thought you were going to say Finn Barmelli there.
How many Finns do we in this team?
Yeah, I know. There's probably only two in the competition. We've got them both, so but we'll move forward. Now, leading goal kicker is generally going to be Nick Lucky, but maybe go top two, Jason.
Okay. I think Larky won, and then look, I'd love it to be Zerha, but he just teases every year that he's gonna go on an absolute tear. So I think for me it's probably Paul Curtis. I think Curtis and Zerha had nearly the same amount of goals last year. Maybe Curtis had one or two more.
Yeah, one more.
Yeah, so I think Curtis for me is probably the one that's going to take more of a step than Zerha. So I think for me, if we're getting more entries, Curtis should be kicking more goals. I think he's got the talent too, so I'll back him in to finish second.
Josh, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, Paul Curtis is mine as well. I'm backing him for a 40-goal season. I don't really know. Like Jason said, we all want Zerha to be that 40-goal-a-year player, but I have to see it to believe it. I think he's got the potential. We all know that, but his last few years have been a little bit flat. I hope with Darling coming in that he can get a bit more free and maybe start bullying a few of the smaller guys in the forward line. And I hope he's just waiting to turn it on in round one and we see prime Bull. I hope we get the Bull instead of Cam Zerha, to be honest. But I'm definitely higher on Paul Curtis. I think his ceiling's a lot higher. If you want an outside shout, maybe Parker, to be honest, if he really plays a lot of forward line time. We saw what he can do in a game in the granny. I know they were down and stuff, but he can make he can play short bursts and make big impacts in short bursts. So Parker would be an outside shout for me.
No, that's a good one, actually. If he's going to spend a fair bit of time for it, I think he would have kicked about 20 goals last year. So, he maybe
didn't play the games, though, to do that. He only played.
Yeah, he played half a season. Half a season. He was playing reserves, but he would have kicked a few.
Would have been on track. Would have got a couple of games, maybe. I don't know.
He kicked 3 against us as a sub. I remember that.
To be honest.
That's true. Jared has said Shees will kick 35.
Imagine.
And get 35 touches a game, probably knowing him. Surprise player of the year, Jason. Last year we had Tristan Sherry and Charlie Comben. Do you see anyone that you really fancy that might be a surprise packet like those two boys were last year?
Oh, that's a good question. Surprise packet. I mean, Josh Goda probably wouldn't be that much of a surprise, but even then, I think the fact that he's coming off a Achilles injury, to me, it would be a bit of a surprise if he, really shot up and was able to play consistent footy. So that would be one. It's a good question. I mean, even similarly, like Charlie Comben obviously had a big year last year in a different role. But I think if he is able to get his his body right and his one-on-one defensive craft improved, I think he could take a big step. And I'm high on Will Phil. I know I don't know where he fits into the side when everyone's fit. I'm unclear on that, but I think he potentially, if he can find a way to get more of the footy, I think he's our best inside 50 kick from the midfield. So maybe after Shees. So he's one that definitely could take a big step if he's able to get a run on.
Fair shout. Yeah, he's looked good in 2 preseason games. What about you, Josh?
I like the Charlie Comben shout. I think if he can develop that one-on-one defending side of his game, I think he can make a big leap again, which is what he did last year as well. But one that's slightly off the board, Jackson Archer. I think he can absolutely elevate himself to being one of the best small defenders in the game. And, his interceptability last year was really, really good. I think he's got decent disposal with his hands. He's kicking. I don't think it's bad, but I don't think it's amazing, but I don't think it's bad. I just think he showed a couple of those lockdown jobs were really, really good on some very high quality players. And with that experience of last year playing so many games, he's obviously a lock for round 1. So yeah, as an outside shout, Will, Phil and Chom, I like those shouts, but if you want something slightly different, give me Jackson Archer to elevate himself to one of the better small defenders in the game and basically undroppable from this team.
Bailey, what about yourself?
So I'll touch on the last one. I've got Larky winning it, but the man who I've got in second, I'll combine into my breakout player. I think this is the year for Cam Zurhaar. He's not going to be playing second tall anymore. He's got Darling in there. I think as the team gets better, he'll get more one-on-one opportunities, and I can see him kicking 40 plus. So he's one that it's a big year for. He's just signed a 5-year deal. He's committed to the club. We know he's teased us for so long with the impact he can make. And I think as he goes down the pecking order in defenders and it's not getting the second key and someone that he can really outmuscle, I think he's going to have a really big year.
Okay, no, that's fair enough. Yeah, hopefully he can have his big breakout year, which we've been hoping for probably the last 4 or 5.
That'll get the comments off Josh for a little bit because I know he's a polarizing character. But
Thanks,
I'm backing in the zoo.
Graham came in a surprise pack at Harvey if they give him a chance, but I don't think they will. Yeah, that'll be very hard for him to get an opportunity, but we'll see how we go. Well, boys, it's been a long podcast. Jason, thank you for coming on. All the best with the podcast this year. I know you've got a newborn, so it's going to be a bit of a challenge on certain days. There's no doubt about that, especially when they start teething. They can, be very, very grumpy, a bit like Josh has been earlier today. But, where can people find you if they want to if they're not listening to you or watching you or whatever you're doing?
So the podcast is called North Pod. You can find me on all the podcast services, and I'm on social media. I'm either a North Pod Show or North Pod. And thank you for having me on. I'm hoping that I can keep my content pretty stable like it was last year. But like you say, I think that there'll no doubt be some weekends where I go, I don't know how I'm going to record a podcast in the next few days. So we'll see how we go. Priorities might shift, but like I said earlier on, we'll be heading to the football with the family, and really looking forward to the year. And fingers crossed we can show some positive signs on the field.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, good luck with everything there too, Jason. Josh, what about yourself? Where can people find you? And, what has been going on with the Further North podcast?
Further North podcast, Apple, Spotify. We're doing big things on YouTube this year as well. So if you haven't got on the YouTube, you can see my face sometimes, and we're going to try and do some little game day sort of videos and things like that this year. Trying to do more on TikTok, filming a video, trying every week for that, which has been really good. So follow along there. As for the pod this year, back in Bay 29 for home games with Close to a Flag. So if you want to get a good atmosphere at the football, get onto Close to a Flag on my page, and we'll give you the links and get tickets to come and party with us in Bay 29. Other than that, got an interview out with Ben Warren as well. If you haven't listened to that, I really recommend it. I think, we've heard so much about your Boomers and your Petries and those sort of players, but some of the guys who are lesser known have some really, really good stories, and him telling the story of his career and his injury and how it actually affected him, which I had no idea about, was really, really interesting, and some pretty shocking stuff sort of happened through that time period, which a lot of the public probably don't know. So get on that podcast and come along for the ride this year. Strap in for, hopefully more than 6 wins.
It's a great interview, by the way. I do like hearing people's stories, especially ex-AFL players. And, yeah, it sounds like he went through a lot. So definitely listen to that and make sure to follow Josh on all socials. Or is at Further North for all his socials, X or Twitter, whatever it is. Have you guys, just while I'm here, have you guys tried, is it Blue Sky or...
No.
Yeah, I've got it. There's it's the old. It's not a lot of traction there. It's the
it's
audience
it's
is
building,
much bigger on X and Instagram. So I'll get a couple of interactions on my Blue Sky stuff, but nothing compared to the other social platforms at the moment.
It feels a little bit like that Vero thing that came out a few years ago, and every social media from now on feels like it's going to be the next thing, but doesn't really turn into it. So I haven't actually tried it, but I'm interested to have a look. But yeah, I don't know if it's gonna blow up. I've also abandoned X or Twitter as well. I just don't enjoy using it, and I think it's rubbish. So sorry everyone who followed me on there. If you do want to still keep up, I mean, Instagram is the way, and YouTube and Facebook. But I did bail on X or Twitter because I just don't really get it, and it sucks.
Yeah, it's definitely gotten a lot more political.
It's only negativity. I just couldn't.
Yeah, and that's a problem.
Was negative,
Yeah, that's fair enough. Bailey, what have you got going on this year, and where can people find you?
Yeah, so me and the Big Chief back again for 2025. So we're doing our preview pods, our review pods. I've got some exciting stuff to come out. We've just joined YouTube, so if you could give a subscribe there, that would be fantastic. And then we're across all socials at the Shin Bonus Podcast. And really looking forward to the year and interacting with our listeners as getting them to send in voice messages now to ask their questions, which has been good fun. And yeah, really looking forward to the year and hopefully reviewing a few more wins than we did in our debut season for the men, I will say, because we had plenty for the women. So, looking forward to the year ahead. And for anyone listening, make sure you're following Dean across his socials as well. He does a great job, and thanks for organising to have all of us on and leading the way as the OG North podcaster.
The podfather himself.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. No, you guys are doing a much better job than me. But no, thanks for the shout out there too, Bailey. Well, Jason, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it, mate.
Thanks, Dano.
Josh, always a pleasure, mate. You take care and good luck for the rest of the year.
Thank you, Dean, for having me again, and go Boston beating LA today.
Yeah, that was good. No, he did enjoy that. And LeBron James just getting injured at the end. That was
flashbacks from the finals last year, maybe. I don't know. Jason Tatum, 35 piece, I think he dropped. So
yeah. Still got Kristaps Porzingis to come back into there, Josh. Bailey, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it, and we'll chat soon. Probably at the halfway point of the year.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm not talking NBA because I'm a Suns fan, and the big three has not worked. So let's move on.
Yeah, that's tough work. But thank you to all you boys for coming on once again. Thank you to all you local listeners as well. I'll be back tomorrow with my regulars. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. Subscribe to the boys as well on their platforms. Tell your mates, missus, and whoever about it. But that's it from me. Bye for now, and go Roos.